My name is Sonia Gant, and it is my delight to officially welcome you and thank you for being here. The League of Women's Voters Gala celebration, and what are we recognizing tonight? The 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote. And earlier that year, the formation of the League of Women Voters. You know, I have a 24-year-old daughter, who cannot imagine that there could have been a time when women couldn't vote or when African Americans couldn't vote. And I'm so glad that that's hard for her to think about. But we all know in this room, people worked very hard to make this a possibility. It was interesting to me to read that it took 72 years. 72 years. Sometimes we get very short-sighted and lose our attention spans. Can you imagine the campaign to make this possible took that long to happen? We have to appreciate it. Before dinner, we're going to be treated to some very unique entertainment. Now, I want you to continue to enjoy your salad, but I want to invite you to travel back in time with me. And I don't want you to go back to last week or last year. We need to roll it way, way back. Maybe a century. Maybe a century. Can you go back 100 years with me? Yes, that should be the answer. Let me ask you again. Can you go back 100 years with me? Beautiful. Okay, now we're all on the same page. You are no longer at a gala celebration in 2020. Instead, you are now a participant in a town hall meeting being held, actually we went back more than 100 years, because this town hall meeting is in 1913. I want to set the stage for you. You're the audience, and you're waiting to hear from the infamous Millicent Adore Men Twitterton. She's an eloquent defender of femininity and an acknowledged anti-suffragist. She will deliver her monologue on behalf of the eternal feminine and against women's suffrage. If you listen, I think I hear her. Yes, I do believe that's her. I actually see her now. Mrs. Adore Men Twitterton entering the hall right now. Let's give her a hand.
Oh! Please do not think of me as old-fashioned. I like to think of myself as a modern, up-to-date woman. Only I do not believe in women's suffrage. Because to do that would be to deny my gender. As for the militant suffragettes, they are hyenas in petticoats. Now, do you want to be a hyena and wear a petticoat? Women's suffrage is the reform against nature. Look at the ladies before me. Observe their physical and mental inability, their spiritual inability, and their general debility. Could they walk up to a ballot box and mark a ballot and drop it in? I think not. All the laws of nature and man cry out against it. The voice of God cries out against it, and so do I. I don't want to be misunderstood here. Doubtless, a woman could get herself to the polls and lift a piece of paper. What I refer to is the pressure on the brain, the effect of this mental struggle, delicate nervous system, and sensitive nature. Have you picked Imagine them having undergone this terrible ordeal. Their delicate systems awry, coming out of the voting booths only to be led away by policemen, put into ambulances while fainting and weeping on the public highway. Don't you agree that if a woman is going to have a fit, it's far better for her to have it in the privacy of her own home? Enfranchisement is what makes a man a man. Disenfranchisement is what makes woman a woman. If women were enfranchised, there would be no difference between the two sexes. And don't you think this would rob life of just a little of its poetry and romance? If a man tries to be like a woman, if a woman tries to be like a man, it will be very confusing and so difficult to explain to our children. I know now you begin to see how strongly I feel on the subject, but I have reasons based on logic. Of course, I am not logical myself. I am a creature of impulse, instinct, and intuition, and I glory in it. But I recognize these reasons are logical because I've called them from the men it is my privilege to know. My first argument against suffrage is that women would not use it. You could not drive them to the polls. Secondly, I submit that if these women were allowed to vote, they would neglect their homes, desert their families, and spend all their time at the polls. I know, you tell me the polls are open only once a year, but knowing women are creatures of habit, if they're permitted to go once a year, they'll hang around the polls all the rest of the time. Divorce and death will rage unchecked, and crime and contagious disease will stalk unbridled through the land. If women had the vote, they would vote exactly as their husbands and merely double the existing vote. Do you agree with that argument? Okay, I'll give you this one. If women were allowed to vote, they would vote against their husbands, creating dissension and divorce. Women are angels. Many men call me an angel. And I have a strong instinct that this is true because I oppose women's suffrage because with the angels I stand. If you don't agree that women are angels, listen to this argument. Women are depraved. If allowed to participate, they would introduce a vicious and spiteful element into political life. In addition, women simply cannot understand politics, and it would be useless to give them political power. They wouldn't know what to do with it. On the other hand, if they were granted the right to vote, women would quickly grab power and take all the offices away from men. They would. We'd have women governors all over the states and dozens of women seeking to become president of the United States. Furthermore, women are incapable of organization. No two women can ever be friends. women are cats. On the other hand, if they had the vote, all women would band together against men. A sex war would follow, ending in a bloody revolution. Many men have told me the ballot is greatly overestimated. The corresponding argument is the ballot is what makes man, man. It's what gives him dignity and his superiority over women. Therefore, if we allow women to share this privilege, how could a woman look up to her husband? Why, there would be nothing to look up to. Women suffragists are unreasonable and interfere too much. I say to them, here I am, convince me. I ask for proof. They tell me of Australia and Colorado and other places where women have passed laws to improve working conditions for women and children. But I say, what of it? I ask for proof. I don't care about facts. They quote statistics about the 8 million self-supporting U.S. women. I say again, these are statistics. I don't believe in statistics. Facts and statistics are things which no truly womanly woman would ever use. I am the prophet of a new idea no one has ever thought of before. This is it. Woman's place is in the home. Is not that beautiful? We anti-suffragists want conditions to remain unchanged. Whatever exists is right. If misery is in the world, God put it there. Let it remain. If this misery presses harder on some women more than others, it's because they need more discipline. Now, I've always been comfortable and well cared for, but then I never needed discipline. Ladies and gentlemen, I am only a weak and ignorant woman, but I know that the divine intention towards woman is to let her remain at home. Think of the great modern invention put into the home, the telephone. Let woman stay at home and answer the telephone. Now, I think I've proved anti-suffrage, and I've done it in a feminine way. That is, of course, without stooping to the use of a single fact, argument, or statistic. Thank you, and good evening.
The League is really honored to have renowned professor, playwright, and poet, Dr. David Radovich. He is here with us this evening, and he's going to offer one of his inspiring poems as our reflection. Please join me in welcoming him.
In honor of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, and also in honor of 100 years of the League of Women Voters, I would like to read a poem tonight from my latest book. It's called America Abroad, an Epic of Discovery. This is a book that covers American history from before the European settlers arrived all the way to the age of space exploration. There are a number of voices, including Sacagawea and Coronado and other characters, but two main narrators. One is Uncle Sam, who is a larger-than-life figure, entrepreneurial, who wants to spread American democracy and culture around the world. And the other is the Statue of Liberty. And Ms. Liberty is more concerned about the poor, the downtrodden, the newly arriving people to these shores. And they have a running dialogue back and forth about what America is or should be. And as you can imagine, Ms. Liberty has the last word. So I'm going to read the last poem in the book. And I would like you to imagine this is the Statue of Liberty speaking. The name of the poem is Flame. We're still not united, though I keep standing tall. He promises way more than he can deliver, rambles with zest, then covers up his misdeeds like a guilty monk, afraid of his organs. Someday, I hope we can face life together, walk down the same aisle, keeping promises, greeting the unbidden in front of our calloused feet. So many needs are still raw. Till then, I am still looking, casting bridges over chasms, holding the harbor together between warships and pleasure boats, feeding the multitudes, nursing the sick, clutching the forgotten, holding high this great flame for the next coming.
And Dolores Johnson Hurt, for those of you who don't know her, is extremely passionate about this organization. And before she comes to the microphone, I thought since we're reflecting a little bit on a historic milestone tonight, I wanted to tell you just a little bit of her personal history. She was actually the first African American to be accepted and to attend Winthrop University in Rock Hill. She was in the first class of students to receive an NAACP Legal Defense Fund scholarship. And that scholarship was designed to help desegregate public colleges and universities in the South. She went on to receive many, many honors, including a Fulbright Hayes Fellowship to study in France at the University of Nice. She joined the League in 2014 and has served as League President since 2016. She is particularly delighted to be serving in that role during the League's 100th year of existence. So please give a warm welcome to Dolores Johnson Hurt.
Thank you so much, Sonia. We are really enjoying having you here tonight, helping us out on our great occasion here. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of our 200-plus Charlotte League members, our board of directors, and our 10-member steering committee, thank you for coming to celebrate one of our country's most victorious moments, the right of women to vote. You know the story of the 70-year fight for that right. You saw it in Lady Gaga's video and heard it in the parody of Mrs. Adorman Twitterton. However, in the midst of this celebration, we must acknowledge that the ratification of the 19th Amendment was only the beginning of a long, arduous fight to remove barriers to voting for all citizens. Applause. So what has the League achieved in 100 years? And what do we stand for now? At 100, the League is alive and well. While our local league was one of the first in the nation and the very first in North Carolina, there are now over 70 state and local leagues, over 500,000 members and supporters, and hundreds of voting rights successes. You may applaud again. Over the years, the Charlotte League worked successfully to get voting machines throughout the county, to end the food tax, and to end school segregation. We created and presented Civics 101, a popular series of classes to educate the public about government. We produced televised candidate debates and registered new voters at high schools and community-sponsored events. Each year, in Charlotte alone, we register to vote between 6,000 and 7,000 new citizens. Between 6,000 and 7,000 new citizens who come from 50 western North Carolina counties to become naturalized citizens. We are in demand by the community to discuss the importance of voting and to help them register voters as well. Our Education Committee, a fixture since the 1950s, has worked on and advocated for school equity, better teaching working conditions, and studies on charter schools and city-county cooperation. Since 1979, men have been active members in the League, and our ranks are now open to any person in the country 16 years and older who share our values and goals. Yes, the League is a nonprofit and nonpartisan organization. We don't support candidates or political parties, but believe you me, we are political. We are political in wanting to assure everyone has the right to vote. And we have taken heat for that. We've taken heat for that. However, the League could not exist without you, our patrons. Your presence here tonight, I argue, speaks to your belief in our motto, empowering voters and defending democracy. We thank all of you, our sponsors tonight, for supporting us. Special thanks to our presenting sponsor, the Bank of America, and other corporations, the Charlotte Observer, Atrium Health, the Foundation for the Carolinas, Duke Energy, and Novant Health. Applause.
I have the honor of recognizing some very special women in this room, and I am pleased that these former presidents can be with us tonight. So will you please stand when I call your name? Mary Clens, Maxine Eves, Karen Bean, and Malin Pratt. And I'm a former president, and I was a co-president with Beth Springston, who did so much work on this event, even after she moved to Vermont. We're sorry she can't be with us tonight. I also want to introduce our state president, Joe Nicholas. Life members of the League have been members for 50 years. We applaud their interest and dedication as evidence of these women who are with us tonight. Their experience and contributions of time and talent are invaluable to the League. We have 4 of these remarkable women with us. Will you please stand as I call your name? Ann Wood, a member for 60. She has been a member for 62 years. Anna Hood, who has been a member for 55 years. Teresia Elder, or T.D. Elder, a member for 52 years. And Betty Chafin Rash, a member for 52 years. Would all the board members for the league please stand? The board members, please stand. Thank you. Would all league members please stand? Now I have the privilege of introducing the women we came to honor tonight. Would all the women who have been elected to public office in the last 20 years please come and stand to the right of the stage, including judges. While they're making their way up here, I want to tell you that in the first 80 years after women won the right to vote, 130 Mecklenburg women were elected to state and local positions. Almost as many women in only the last 19 years had achieved victory at the ballot box. All of these women have proven themselves in the electoral arena, not only stepping up to compete for positions, as well as successfully taking on incumbents. The League of Women Voters salutes these women who have put themselves forward for public scrutiny and won the endorsement of voters. They have shown themselves to be hardworking, serious thinking, and innovative public servants. A leaguer never asks the question, is this country ready for a woman president? We thank these women for their service to our state and community. And may I add, many are members of the League of Women Voters, and some have been graduates of our Civics 101 program and now are teachers in it. As I call your name, will you please step forward and be recognized?
Dr. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins. Dr. Jefferson Jenkins is the only woman of color to have served as national president in our organization's first 100 years. Let's give her a round of applause right now. Her career in public school and higher education has spanned more than 40 years. At the time of retirement, she continues to be an advocate for civil rights, social justice, educational excellence, and stronger citizen participation in the electoral process for underrepresented populations. She actively serves on numerous boards, advises community-based organizations, and has received numerous awards for her contributions. The latest is a Freedom Summer of '64 award from Florida's Miami University. That award honors leaders who strive to advance civil rights and social justice in America. Dr. Jefferson Jenkins' new book, The Untold Story of Women in the League of Women Voters, is hot off the press, literally. She received copies just yesterday afternoon and has been able to bring some with her. Please welcome Dr. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins.
Thank you, Dolores, for that introduction. And when she said how many years, I said, it reminded me of the 90th anniversary of the League when they invited all the former living presidents to serve on a panel. Makes you realize how old you are. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to participate in this Centennial Celebration Gala, particularly following that parade of women who were just honored. Let's give them another round of applause, please. So exactly 20 years ago, I came to North Carolina as the president of the League of Women Voters of the United States to join in the 80th celebration. At that time, it was entitled 80 Years of Action, and I'm glad to see that there are still some people here who were here 20 years ago, so you may not hear the same remarks. Mary Clintz and Maxine Eves were the people who hosted me for that visit. It has certainly been an interesting 20 years, and it would be an understatement to say that there have not been changes in those 20 years. Wow, that's not the reaction I expected. I stood before you then, 20 years ago, as the first woman of color to serve as president of the LWVUS. I stand before you now as a proud North Carolinian and the only woman of color to have served as president in the organization's first 100 years. Thank you. Slightly older, but significantly wiser. So it is indeed an honor to have the opportunity to share with you as we celebrate the League's past as a prelude to its future. In your gala brochure, you have the League history, and we've also heard the anti-suffragist comments, but what we haven't heard is the importance that women of color played in the suffrage movement and in the League of Women Voters, their untold story. What I want to do tonight is to challenge you to commemorate in truth, recognizing that to do otherwise does not represent a comprehensive history. I want to inspire you to conduct your own research, recognizing the importance of an integrated history in this era of intolerance. I want to move the conversation of the contributions of women of color from the footnotes to the mainstream history of the suffrage movement and the League of Women Voters. Now, I know that in 10 minutes it will be difficult to recount 100 years of history, but I will try, because this is not just a celebration, it's an exercise in discovery. Discovery of the contributions that have been forgotten, erased, or obscured. The League is celebrating 100 years of action, and oh, what stories we will tell. Usually we tell the ones that we like, and that's just human nature. The capacity to tell stories is what keeps history alive. Stories inform us, they inspire us, and they provide a foundation for our future. I was impressed 20 years ago by the recognition of women of color at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Gala. That caused me to wonder where the stories of these women were in the national recorded histories. So now, 20 years later, armed with the stories of the women upon whose shoulders I stand, I understand the completeness of the League story. So it is indeed an honor to share with you a celebration of women who have previously been relegated to the footnotes of history, but who from this day forward will receive their due. This evening is particularly significant to me because it is the actual release date of my new book, The Untold Story of Women of Color in the League of Women Voters. Thank you. So why this story? Why now? And my response is because it's time. The history that many portray during this centennial is a romanticized, sanitized version of our accomplishments and our achievements, and we ought to celebrate those things. They're the things we're most proud of. We mention challenges, however, only in the context of our external confrontations to our activities or our issues. Our representation is similar to taking a selfie. We use filters, we get the right angle, we get the right lighting because we want the best photo. But the true story of the suffrage movement and its legacy organization, the League of Women Voters, is a complicated story. It's a story of controversy and compromise. It's a story of soaring achievements and striking flaws. It's a story of strategic choices and recurrent themes. It's a story of constant tension between practicality and principles. We live with the truism that we want our heroes to be perfect, but history reminds us that they are just people. The unabridged history is complicated, messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes unbelievable on issues of race. But to be true to its principles, it is imperative that the League of Women Voters recounts its history in its 2020 commemorations and acknowledges the inequity. From acknowledging these unpleasant truths can come a brighter future. It is fortuitous that the League's anniversary occurs during Black History Month, because this year also marks the 150th anniversary of the ratification of the 15th Amendment, which gave Black men the right to vote. That action caused a monumental rift in the suffrage movement. So this is an appropriate bridge between Black History Month and Women's History Month. I am here tonight to remind you that the League of Women Voters was born from the struggle for the right to vote for women. Women of color were there too from the beginning. But for them, the ratification of the 19th Amendment was not the universal celebration that it was reported to be. Winning the vote for women required 72 years of advocacy, but for most women of color, it required an additional 45 years with the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Hundreds of women of color made commendable contributions to the women's suffrage movement and the League of Women Voters, many of whom you may never know because their involvement has been overlooked. We need to put a human face on what has happened so that it is no longer abstract. Many of you know the contributions of Ida B. Wells Barnett, who refused to march at the back of the suffrage parade, and Mary Church Terrell, who wrote A Colored Woman in a White World, and Sojourner Truth, the premier abolitionist and women's rights activist, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, president of the National Council of Negro Women. But what about Nannie Helen Burroughs, who was a suffragist and gave a speech called How Sisters Are Hindered from Helping? What about Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who was an abolitionist and a suffragist and a poet and a teacher and a public speaker and a writer? The Fortin sisters, who were suffragists and abolitionists who co-founded the Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society after being excluded from the American Anti-Slavery Society. And Anna Julia Cooper, and Hetty Tilghman, and Josephine St. Pierre Ruffin, and Addie Waits Hunton, who led a group of colored women who proposed to the League leaders at their 1921 convention that the League assist colored women in achieving the full privileges of suffrage. Delilah Beasley, who communicated with the National League leaders on a regular basis, acquainting them with the struggles of women of color who attempted to affiliate with the organization. Dr. Dorothy Height, Dr. Josie Johnson, who was the first Black National Board member appointed in 1968, the Honorable Shirley Chisholm, and all of the women in such organizations as the National Council of Negro Women. Similar stories of perseverance can be told about North Carolinians. Vivian Irving, who in 1955 became the first colored member in Raleigh, Mrs. David Bradley, T.D. Elder, Hattie Anderson, Peggy Beckwith, the Honorable Shirley Fulton, the Honorable Beverly Earl, Dr. Mildred Baxter Davis, Maxine Eves, Verily Fowler, Charlotte Hawkins Brown, Dolores Johnson Hurt, the Honorable Vi Lyles, and many of the other women in Charlotte-Mecklenburg that make a difference, whose names you are familiar with, but that I don't have the time to honor all tonight. The League of Women Voters and other organizations celebrating the passage of the 19th Amendment cannot continue to marginalize or render invisible the contributions of women of color or include them as an afterthought. These organizations must make sure that the voices of women of color are heard. Their voices offer a unique perspective. Theirs is a story that needs to be told, a story that represents universal themes of passion, purpose, and perseverance that transcend race. This is personal for me. To be the first is an honor. To be the only, a disappointment, a missed opportunity. Disclosing the stories of women of color in the League of Women Voters and affirming their unique challenges allows us to reimagine the organization of the future. Facilitating inclusion which is not tied to a specific moment in time, but is part of the organization's fabric that cannot be frayed. The League of Women Voters of the United States Centennial represents a major opportunity to acknowledge and to honor the organization's unabridged history, a history that incorporates and celebrates women of color in their rightful place. It is time. Let's pivot toward a productive future, toward a future of access and inclusion. My dream for this organization that has such promise is that in its next 100 years, it will value all people, in reality, not just rhetoric, in value, not just voice, in beliefs, not just benefits gained, no quotas, no stereotypes, no labels, no double standards, without the residue of race. The League must be an organization that is true to its principles. The League of Women Voters is my organization of choice, and it is positioned for change. And the next 100 years is about change. It is about building on the successes of the past and welcoming the opportunities for the future. We are entrusted with the legacy of the suffrage movement and challenged to move the contributions of women of color from the footnotes to the mainstream narrative of history. Let's do just that. What we decide to do here tonight will forever and fundamentally alter the core of this grassroots membership organization. So let's celebrate. Let's celebrate by acknowledging our past as a prelude to the future, by telling the truth and using lessons learned to do better, by moving forward, by imagining the unimaginable, by reclaiming the power of our complete story, by telling the untold story of women of color in the League of Women Voters. And I want to conclude with a quote from Mary Church Terrell, activist, abolitionist, suffragist, and longtime League member. And she said, and I quote, "And so, lifting as we climb, onward and upward we go, struggling and striving, and hoping that the buds and blossoms of our desires will burst into glorious fruition ere long. With courage, born of success achieved in the past, with a keen sense of responsibility which we shall continue to assume, we look forward to a future large with promise and hope, seeking no favors because of our color, nor patronage because of our needs. We knock at the bar of justice, asking an equal chance." So tonight, let's make this our call of action. At this 100th anniversary gala of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg League of Women Voters on February 29, 2020, let us pledge to remember that the contributions of women of color must be acknowledged in the mainstream narrative of history. I am more than a footnote. You are more than a footnote. We are more than a footnote. Happy birthday, League of Women Voters, and thank you.
Many of us think about how many times we've been described as the first, and it really is regrettable if you're the first and the last. And I don't think you used that word. You said we could continue to do better.
But I mean, we really ought to be thinking about that. That was really well said and well spoken. So tonight I have the opportunity to introduce a friend, Kathy Besant. Now you know Kathy, or if you know her, and if you've read anything about her, you know that she's pretty dynamic. And she's made some serious strides in this community. In fact, in this country, and now pretty much globally. Not only are those strides professional, but they're personal. And so I thought that I would actually talk a little bit about her professional things, and then I decided, well, forget that. We'll talk about Kathy as I know her. You know, she's really a very authentic person. She talks about her story with truth and candor. And you know, sometimes that's hard to do because you're on this space and place that people expect you always to be just perfect. And I have not met that perfect person yet. And the thing about Kathy is that she will talk to you about what it's like not to be perfect. I heard her speak to a group of women, this was several years ago, and I was in the group, and she talked about choices that she made when Bank of America was changing significantly. And she made a choice that showed the value of the relationships that she has with her family, first and foremost, over any business decision that would take place. Now, you know, when you're on that trajectory up in that corporate world of banking, you start thinking about, you know, I want to be one of those women in the top 100 or the top 10 of everything. But Kathy made a choice to be 100% there for her children at that time. Now, that's a tough decision to make, and that is being authentic. The other thing that I thought about is that Kathy doesn't express enough the contributions that she has made as a result of the legacy that she has with her mother being a teacher in education. Kathy and I worked together on a task force around public education in CMS, and this was years ago. And it is one of those reports that made a little bit of incremental change, but not enough to do the kind of work that we thought it would. But she never gave up on that. She never gave up on the idea that our public schools could be public schools for everyone to be successful. And she still cares deeply about that. She's not afraid to take a chance, and she doesn't shy away from a challenge. One of the things that you know about Kathy is she's been at Bank of America for a very long time. Now, one of the passions that she brought with her when she relocated from Texas, I don't know why she would even be in Texas, but when she relocated here, she came because she had done work in community development, and guess what? Affordable housing. She did that for a very long time. And in fact, years ago when I was just trying to figure out what that meant, she was there to help me learn and succeed in that effort. And a lot of the work that you're seeing today is a result of the thinking about it. I don't know how many of you know that First Ward, those apartments down there are still 1/3 subsidized, 1/3 market rate, and 1/3 absolutely affordable for the very least of us in this community. And that's the kind of work that Kathy pushed out, and it's her legacy today. I'm going to just mention a few other things. You know, Kathy is the executive sponsor of Bank of America's Disability Advisory Council. No one's going to be left behind on her watch. Her work in the LGBT community has shown her to be a strong ally for all of us, no matter race, gender, sex, orientation, all of those words. For Kathy, what she believes in is an individual opportunity for everyone to be successful. So I could talk a little bit about banking, but that's not really where I see Kathy. I see Kathy as a leader in our community, in our country, and across this world. She is making a difference, and I'm really glad to be able to introduce her to you in my own way to say, welcome to the stage, Kathy Besant. Oh my goodness. Seriously, how many times does someone introduce you and you feel misunderstood? I'm Pink. I could sing Pink tonight. No, thank you so much, Mayor Lyles. That meant a lot to me. And I honestly feel understood by the introduction, and that's saying a lot. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. We're here on a very important day. What day is it today? It is February 29th. What is February 29th? Leap Day! Leap Day is one of the coolest dates ever in the history of man. No, really, this is a freebie day. It is better than daylight savings time where you get to fall back and you get an extra hour. I fly all over the world a whole bunch, and it's even better than flying east and getting to live 6 hours all over again. This is a whole entire day that only comes once a year. Once every 4 years. Thank you. Okay, good. This is participation. We're going to have fun at 8:45 tonight. Okay. But I think on the coolest date, it's important to do special and meaningful things. And if you follow my tweets or me on Instagram, I've been tweeting about it all day. Tonight we are doing something that is incredibly special and way more than worthy of February 29th. We're celebrating the League of Women Voters, 100 years, and the passage of the 19th Amendment, 100 years. Now, I am a certifiable nut about voting. My family will tell you that. Anyone around me will tell you that. The people I work with will, in fact, tell you that. But it's not without good reason. My mom was first generation born in the United States. My grandparents emigrated from Germany in 1926. Can you imagine coming from Germany to the United States in 1926? And at the time, the only thing that was important to them was becoming a citizen of the United States. So what most of us in the room enjoy as a right of birth, my grandparents had to earn. And as a result, voting was completely sacrosanct in our house. My mother also believed that your vote was extremely private. We talked a lot about voting and a lot about elections. We never discussed who we voted for. We still don't do that at my house. I hold my kids accountable to vote. I don't hold them accountable for who they vote for, and I don't expect them to tell me who they vote for. I have found in my life today, therefore, that my 2 to 5 minutes in the voting booth are in fact the only place, literally, on the planet where I'm 100% completely private and not accountable to anyone afterwards. In the 4th grade, I decided I would run for class president. I went home and told my mother, I am running against Linda Morris. Linda Morris was my best friend. And I said, you know what, Mom, I'm going to vote for Linda. No kidding, I said that. And my mom taught me a lesson that has stayed with me, and that moment turned out to be one of the most pivotal moments of my life. She said, well, first of all, if you're not going to vote for yourself, you don't deserve to be in the race. If you don't think you're the best candidate, how can anybody else think you're the best candidate? So I went to school the next day, I voted for myself, and yes, I won by 1 vote. That's the truth. So can you imagine all the lessons learned in over 2 days in Sister Mary Leo's class at Queen of the Miraculous Medal School? In college, looking for a way to be involved, I took a job in charge of NBC exit polling for the 1980 presidential election for the entire state of Michigan. Now, this involved what in exit polling at the time, 1980, meant three things: research, recruit volunteers, and report the results. Okay? I spent my entire summer researching which precinct should be selected, where the exit doors were, how many doors there were, how many volunteers we would need. I had no idea how to get volunteers. I was 20 years old. But I relied on three organizations that made all the difference. And remember, Michigan, look at yours, this is Michigan right here. I had precincts all the way up to the tippy top of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I went to the League of Women Voters, the American Association for University Women, and Girl Scouting. Three organizations that forever, since their inceptions individually, have represented the very best of what it means to be a woman and the very best of what it means to be a world with impactful women. All of my precincts reported. I got a little bonus, $250 for that. Let's just give you one other element to the picture. There were no electronics. All of my research was done with handwritten notes. My list of volunteers doing the polling, all handwritten. And in my sorority house, 14 of us shared one phone, and I had to report all night, so I got pretty popular with the other girls. In the 2000 presidential election, fast forward, my son is a baby, but on maternity leave, the bank decides to move me to Florida. I have no time to register to vote. I have nothing, and suddenly it's November, and I haven't registered in Florida, and I have no absentee ballot. So I got on a plane on Election Day. Now, if you're a Bank of America shareholder, I should tell you I paid for it myself. But I did the only thing I knew how to do. I flew to Charlotte to vote. And if you walked into my closet today, you would find a sticker collection. And it's all over my closet, and it says, I voted early, I voted early. There's nobody that leaves the polling precinct without that sticker more than me. So I am a all of these things are true. I am a certifiable crazy person about the importance of voting. By the way, back to my one vote wins story. The passage of the 19th Amendment, as Sonia mentioned earlier, came down to one vote. The 19th Amendment, can you imagine, came down to one man, one state, one vote. And the guy who was voting, Henry Burns, he was opposed to the amendment from its inception. The famous note that he pulled out from his mother said this: "Hurrah, and vote for suffrage. Don't keep them in doubt. Now be a good boy and put the rat in ratification." Like every good man, he listened to a woman. Now, why am I a nut about voting? I don't have to tell all of you. You are the keepers of the why. It's why you're important, in fact, because this is the group that proselytizes to the rest of the world about why we need to vote. But let me tell you why I think it's important. I believe what Margaret Mead says: a small group of thoughtful citizens changes the world. I believe what Thomas Paine says: the right of voting for representatives is the primary right by which other rights are protected. It starts with a single vote. No other right comes about without the right representatives in the room to create those rights. For me, everything about our hard-won, don't believe anybody granted us or rewarded us with the right to vote. We won it. The hard-won right to vote is important because it's our most important obligation, it's our most important privilege, and to me, it's the definition of citizenship. It all starts there. Now, I have a few other beliefs, and I'm not going to take a long time to tell you about them, not because I'm standing between you and drinks, I always hate it when people say that, but because I'm standing between you and an auction. And I want you to participate in that auction because advocacy takes money.
All right, so I'm going to get you into that room as soon as humanly possible. But some of my views are a little bit controversial, and I thought I'd share them with you. I believe that the right to political participation starts with voting. I love democracy and I love the political process. It's messy and it's ugly, but change doesn't happen without advocacy, and it doesn't happen without messy discourse. You gotta love the mess in order to love democracy. For those of you women in the room who are Simple Abundance book fans, I think of it as the divine dissonance. There is no oyster in the world makes a pearl without a whole bunch of dirt inside. Now, I extend that to say, failing to vote, you will lose my ear and my sympathy. You never lose my empathy. Right, yeah. Empathy, I believe, is another story. I believe we're all accountable for looking at the world through someone else's eyes. It's the only way we can begin to understand how other people think. But if you want to describe or complain about a civic act, or you want to describe and complain an elected official, the first words you will hear from me are, "Did you vote?" Because if you didn't vote, don't talk to me about it. Honestly. You want to tell me that you're sad or worried about the decline in arts funding in Charlotte, North Carolina? I'm sad too, believe me. But my first question to you is going to be, did you vote for the bonds? Did you even vote in the election? I don't care what you voted for. Did you vote? Because to me, the opportunity to present a problem is easy. Voting is our chance to be a part of the solution. I become a social pariah at parties because really people know I'm going to say, did you vote? The second thing I believe, and it kind of flies into the face of current thinking, and certainly my experience when I went to vote last week early for the presidential primary and the other down ballot items, I believe we have to embrace technology in the voting process and not walk away from it. Now, another story about my mom. My mom did get suspended in high school. Eaton Rapids, Michigan. More people go to South Meck than live in Eaton Rapids, Michigan. But my mom got suspended for this. She and her friends had a particular candidate that they wanted to be the school president. And so, in the manual days of voting, they stuffed the ballot box. One problem. They stuffed the ballot box with more ballots than there were students. She was an English major, not a math major. The truth of it is, with technology, tabulation, protection of data, transparency around data, and the ability for its traceability and forensic analysis are better with technology than without it. Technology is the answer, not the problem. The challenge is technology costs money, it needs development, it needs work. After I had my voting experience last week, I vowed to get engaged in how technology can make our voting process better, safer, and more transparent, and that's what we have to be all about. And then my last observation or belief that could possibly be controversial comes from Virginia Case, who's the CEO of the League of Women Voters US. Lessons of our history must inform our present and our future. I believe what Sonia said. It is incredibly hard for me to believe that this generation and all the generations to follow will never know what it took to get them the vote. Never know it. It's extremely important that they remember something Susan B. Anthony said at the time. Someone struggled for your right to vote. Use it. The challenge is, how do we motivate people to want to vote when they aren't ever going to understand that struggle? So I believe that 100 years of suffrage and 100 years of voting have to drive our present and our future, our will, our culture, and our achievement of one objective, 100% voter participation. Honestly, I am not interested in incremental change here. The standard we have to set for ourselves, one of the largest and most important democracies in the world, is 100% voter participation. In December, I had the great privilege of spending some time one-on-one with Prime Minister Modi in India. He runs the largest democracy in the world. His objective is the same: full voter participation, and I believe all great democracies should want that. But it's going to take some work. We have to have inclusive and supportive voting processes. We've got to modernize our outdated practices around accessibility. Could you imagine, I used to go to the bookmobile when I was a kid, could you imagine a voting mobile? How about drive-through voting? There is a funeral home in Goldsboro, North Carolina, where you can drive through and sign the guest book. True, I've done it. How about thinking about the right day of the week or running elections on multiple days of the week? All of these could be good ideas or bad ideas, but we've got to make accessibility a modern thing and not something that's grounded in an agrarian or some other form of how we've all grown up. I believe we have to make a way for electronic voting. There is almost nothing I can do that doesn't involve the utmost need for privacy, include manage my own money. But I can't vote electronically. These things are all tough to figure out, but this is my charge to the League of Women Voters. You are our path forward to the future. The way voting needs to change to get to that 100% is on all of us, and I'm asking all of you to dive in and try to make that happen. Suffrage produced immense progress, but progress is not perfection. And by the way, I don't think it needs to be. Given two choices, progress or perfection, one's current, one's somewhere in the future and hard to predict, I'm going for progress every single time. As we know, in 1920, women won the right to vote, but voting wasn't always possible. The right to vote did not equal the ability to vote. Polling injustice for African American women persisted until the 1960s. You gave us a great lesson in that, Doctor, but you just got to stop and think about that for a minute. Great progress, but a long time to get to perfection. Since 1920, many women, and especially here in Mecklenburg County, where in 1921 we started seeing our first women elected to office, tremendous amount of progress. Yet today, our House of Representatives is at 23% women, our Senate's at 25%. 100 years later, still no woman president. We have got progress to make, people, and when you get beyond racial diversity to LGBT plus representation in our elected bodies, how about to physical diversity and the people with physical challenges and their representation in our elected bodies? The data in both of those demographics makes our gender data look great. There's a lot of work to do there too. The lesson there to me is the role of the League of Women Voters has never, ever, ever, ever been more important. Lots of progress, well on our way. Perfection has to be the goal. And it's one day at a time, obviously one vote at a time, but man, are we here in this room tonight talking about some incredibly important things. My last point today, we have an opportunity to change the future in Mecklenburg County, and that opportunity is upon us right now. 2020 census. What is Census Day? April 1st. Ironic, but true. 3 facts about the census this year. Everybody should remember the count is about residents, not about citizenship. We need to know how many people live here, regardless of their citizenship. but most people don't believe that. Second thing is your personal data is absolutely private. So if you have 4 people living in your apartment and you're only supposed to have 2, writing down 4, your landlord will never know. Again, most people don't know or believe that. And the third thing is, this is the first year ever, census reporting will be done on an electronic basis. We all know that minorities, we all know that people of different cultures, we all know that non-English speaking people as residents are underrepresented in our census counts. Can you imagine who's underrepresented in their ability to have Wi-Fi access or the kind of device that it is going to take to respond to the census? I know it's a little late at night to be so heavy, but I am so focused on can this census deliver an accurate count, which for a growing county like Mecklenburg is incredibly important. In 2016, North Carolina got $24 billion in aid from 55 programs. The basis for that aid distribution, census count. Okay? At the last count, we were 15,600 people in Mecklenburg County from getting an additional congressional House seat. We want our state to have power nationally. We can make that happen with an accurate count. So please join me and a group of MEC Counts 2020 and the League of Women Voters to ensure that every resident matters. Every vote matters, and every resident matters. And we have a great opportunity right in front of us to make sure that we do something special, to change our voters, to change our electorate in the future. I hope it's obvious to you. I am so honored to be here. I laughed when I saw the line in the program that said, when asked to come, Kathy enthusiastically accepted. I have like 10 more pages of things I'd like to talk about. I meant what I said in the beginning. I am a voting freak show. I'm a voting freak show with great pride and great belief that it's the foundation of this country. It's the foundation of what makes us great. It's what we've got to preserve, protect, defend, expand, improve, and get to perfection. I am so grateful, by the way, thank you, Betty, for asking me to do it. There's nobody who could have gotten me out on a Saturday night, except for maybe on this topic, but anything for you, always. I'm so grateful for the work all of you do. Our elected officials, members of the League, people who are here tonight as supporters, people who might have been skeptical when you walked in the room. I can't possibly believe you'd be skeptical walking out. I am, and we are, the beneficiaries of an incredible suffrage movement. The work of the people that have gone before us has marked the last 200 years. The next 200 are ours. It is Leap Day, and we are going to make it count. Thank you very much.